I want to see like an exhibit of the Sasquatch. I don't want to run across one in a while. I don't know how many black people you've had on your podcast, but I feel like it's okay to speak for the entire black race that we're not fucking in the woods like that. We're not going out to the woods to figure out if Sasquatch is real, man. I've never been camping, actually. But I'm out in Chicago tonight. And very far away from any kind of forest. So I do travel a lot. I'm on the road a lot. I travel from the Midwest to the Northwest a lot. And I've never once had the feeling of let's go out and find Sasquatch. That's never been a thing for me. I'm on the side where I believe that these things could potentially be real. I'm always try everything or believe everything once. You know what I mean?
My Alien Life is recorded live from atop the Northern Rocky Mountains and is available on Spotify, Stitcher, iTunes, and everywhere fine podcasts are found. My website is at www.myalienlifepodcast.com. There you will find my email address, all previously recorded shows, and more. I am Cameron Brower. This is My Alien Life, and the podcast starts right now.
My Alien Life Podcast.
Three, two, 1, 0, and liftoff.
My guest tonight is a stand-up comic and a published comedy writer. He's a native of Tacoma, Washington, and he has a podcast called A Drunken Night Out. It's funny. I listen to it. It's very professional all at the same time. Tonight, we're launching some comedy relief, hopefully, on this podcast, because frankly, talking about aliens and UFOs so often can be kind of stressful. Welcome, Ken Hamlett, to My Alien Life, the podcast.
Yeah, man. Thanks. Also, thanks. You're the first person that's ever called A Drunken Night Out professional.
It sounds good. I mean, there's the background. It sounds good. Every one of those sounds. I listened to 4 of them, and I like it. So
thank you, man.
Normally, I don't stick with a podcast. I basically podcasts for me. Other people's podcasts are kind of like research. I'm kind of bouncing from podcast to podcast, and yours are good. Really good. So,
thank you, man. I appreciate that.
Tonight we're going to talk a little bit about aliens and UFOs, Bigfoot, whatever you want, and I just want your unbiased opinion because I'm guessing that you haven't done much Squatch hunting out there on the road.
No, it's not like a top 5 thing for me. I rarely do Squatch hunting.
That might be number 1 though after your first try. Ken, I've never done it. So,
I've never done it. I do. So aliens and stuff, very interesting to me. I will hop down a rabbit hole on YouTube, and I will get lost in the pyramids. And the thing about the pyramids that really gets to me. Have you done the research about the pyramids and do you know that they're all exactly in specific pinpoint positions?
They are in pinpoint positions. I've had one of my guests, Steve. You look back a few months ago, he was on, and he'll be on again. But yeah, it's pretty remarkable.
That shit blows my mind because it's hard to think that we're the only intelligent life forms out there, right? The fucking universe with a billion
Did you
stars.
Did you say intelligent? I don't know. That's up for debate.
Also, yeah, up for debate.
But I'll tell you what, if I ever go Squatch hunting, I'm going to call you, and promise me now we'll make a pact that you're going to call me if you ever go, and I'll be there, man. I'll hop on a plane.
Oh yeah, let's do it. Like you're in New York, right?
No. I'm in Montana.
No, Montana. Oh,
yeah.
Even better.
So yeah, I'm right in the midst of it, and the only reason that I haven't seen one is because if they are out there, I don't want to be out there, you know. And I've made that clear. I don't want to be out there.
Oh yeah, why would you want to meet a person, a thing, is thing the correct term to use to describe a Sasquatch? I don't know. Are we there yet where they have their own also identification? You know.
I mean, they should be coming and viewing us if they want to.
I definitely don't want to run across one in the wild. That would be the worst. I would want to see one at like Disneyland or something. You know what I mean? Like, I want to see like an exhibit of the Sasquatch. I don't want to run across one in the wild. You know,
I have people that send me stuff all the time, and it just never ceases to amaze me that you know, they'll send me photos and things that they took and recordings, and I mean, it is eerie. You put all that stuff together, and it's something that just would, you know, make me stay out of the woods. It's not that it's exciting, but it's not the kind of excitement I want.
Yeah, no. I don't know how many black people you've had on your podcast, but I feel like it's okay to speak for the entire black race. We're not fucking in the woods like that. We're not going out to the woods to figure out if Sasquatch is real, man. I've never been camping, actually.
Seriously. So where are you? Yeah. Where are you tonight? You said you're getting gas when we texted earlier. Are you out on the road tonight?
Yeah, I'm in Chicago. Oh, I live in Chicago actually, but I'm out in Chicago tonight, and very far away from any kind of forest. So I'm not. I do travel a lot. I'm on the road a lot. I travel through from the Midwest to the Northwest a lot, and I've never once had the like feeling of like, let's go out and fucking find Sasquatch. Like that's never been never been a thing for me. What does like Squatch hunting look like anyway? What do you do?
You know, there's a bunch of shows.
Is there like a?
Yeah, there's shows on TV, and they go out usually in a group. You don't see, you know, people going out there alone. I wouldn't go out there alone, but they go out in a group. And there's I've had a Squatch hunter on the show, and there's a whole protocol and procedure now that they do, and you know, making different sounds and you know, going to certain areas that they've heard that are occupied. And you know, it's not like the Northwest anymore, you know, where I thought it was, oh yeah, British Columbia, Montana, Washington State, Northern Idaho, full of Bigfoot. But I mean, West Virginia, you know, Michigan and is a big one in Florida.
Michigan.
Yeah, in Florida. So,
all right.
So yeah, you're not safe anywhere to be camping in the woods. Well, I there's not a lot of interactions though. People, you don't hear too many people that have been attacked by Bigfoot. You know, aliens. I mean, aliens have been known to abduct people, and people are never the same again. Some people are better, but it seems that most people have some sort of reaction, whether it be positive or negative. But Bigfoot's a whole different deal. You know, I grew up pretty much out on the prairie in the eastern part of Montana. And now I've lived for many, many years in the western part in the mountains, and you know, I'm not hip to that, man.
Aliens, the whole thing, all of it kind of worked. Like, there's like a thing where you're like, all right, if these things are real, how come all of us don't experience it?
Well, like that. Go ahead.
No, like I was gonna say, like, but that could be said for a million different things.
Yeah, absolutely.
But like, also, like, why do we not experience it? I'm on the side where I believe that like these things could potentially be real. I'm always like, yeah, try everything or believe everything once. You know what I mean?
And I've heard plenty of people say, well, you know, why if they're out there, why haven't I been abducted? But then I've heard people say, well, why haven't I been abducted? And then 6 months later on their podcast, well, maybe I have. There's some evidence, but one of the things that's very, very prevalent is it's a person who's been abducted, and there's a possibility that it's in the family. Maybe that person's father or grandfather or whatever. There's that, and then there's certain areas that are very, very. You're more likely to get abducted in areas of certain parts of the country, and as a matter of fact, where I grew up, just north of a major Air Force base, it just seemed like it was kind of one of those places where things happened. And when I was growing up, we didn't talk about it much. There was people that saw things, and we knew maybe this kid who was his dad was a farmer, and they had seen something, coming home one night, and it got to the point where, excuse me, we didn't talk about it. There was cattle mutilations out there because there was a lot of cows. We didn't talk about it, and it was just part of that area. It's just which seems really odd to me. But there's a lot of places now that have sporadic things that happen. People see lights. Even upstate New York and New York City. They've have some on YouTube. So it's who knows? I mean, I don't have any answers really, to tell you the truth. I just know what I hear.
What are the most popular areas for being abducted? I know Roswell, New Mexico, that's the holy grail. But what are the other popular, less known places?
Well, Roswell obviously has gotten its money's worth out of whatever happened there, and people are still researching that, and people still talk about it. They write about it. I know a couple of books that I've seen on Facebook that are coming out that deal with Roswell, but I grew up right on the Canadian border in central Montana, and across there is Alberta, Canada. And I always tell people, if you want to see something weird and you want to see something in the sky that you can't explain, come to that part of Montana. And really? I actually, it's weird because just a couple of podcasts ago, I had somebody on, and she wrote a book and had part of a chapter in a book about that part of Montana, which she had never been before, but it was, it was something that she had heard about. So, and everybody that listens to me has heard this story, Ken, but when I was a kid, we used to sleep outside, it was out on the prairie, and it was 80 degrees at night, and it was hot, and you'd look up in the sky, and when I was a little kid, you'd see the occasional satellite go by, but you would see these same things that I could think were satellites, and they would be just going across the sky in a straight line. All of a sudden they'd make a 90-degree turn and then maybe go a little ways and stop, and stop.
Definitely have had those experiences. Yeah. Where cause I grew up in the country, and it's you see stuff going on a straight line, and then it just completely takes a 90-degree turn, and then it'll pause, and then take another 90-degree turn, and you're like, nothing moves that way in the air. What is going on?
See, you're in what we call an experiencer. It's that's one of the coolest things. And when I was a kid, we would see that, and it wasn't like you'd run and grab your parents and say, hey, come and look at this, because by that time it was just a dot in the sky. But they're out there, and I knew, and a lot of people where I grew up, they all saw stuff like that, and so it was one of those. So what part of the world are you talking about when you were a kid and you saw that?
That was Washington State.
Oh yeah, because
Northwest as well.
Tacoma,
so, Tacoma area. But my parents, I lived out in Roy and in Puyallup, which are more rural areas.
Right.
So there's a lot more sky to look at, less light, city lights. What do they call it? When the city lights block out the sky?
Yeah, and it washes out any light that you. But back, even 20 years ago, it was not as bad as it is right now. It's a pretty nice area though that you live in. I used to spend a bit of time there, and I saw that on the road that you've been in Spokane and done Spokane, and yeah. Did you ever
been out to Montana? Been out to?
Have you?
Yeah, I've been all over the Northwest, I've pretty much done everything. So like I've been out to Montana, I've been out to Idaho, Washington, Eastern Washington, California, Nevada. I've been out to Arizona, just being out there. And yeah, I've been to a lot of the areas in that the Northwest. I've been to Canada, various spots, Vancouver, all the way up to like Kenosha. So I've been
nice.
Heavy in the Northwest region.
So that Montana, we're not really known for our comedy clubs, but sometimes they can turn it up in a local bar somewhere. What about like Spokane? I've seen some comedy there. They have a couple decent venues there, and there's a couple of pretty good comedians that came out of Spokane. I don't know if you know Dan Cummins. He's from up there. Yeah, he's a funny guy and
very funny, very funny.
Yeah, and he's been on Comedy Central and I think Jimmy Kimmel and a couple of times.
The east side of Washington has like a lot of talent out that way. Actually, surprisingly, I didn't know that until I got older and like really got into comedy. But the eastern side of Washington definitely has a lot of talent, and they have like one of the best comedy clubs in the country. Like it's a huge comedy club, Spokane Comedy Club. Actually, is the name of the comedy club, but it's a super high quality comedy club. They're bringing a lot of talent, like the biggest names in the country and stuff, and internationally. So,
yeah, I've been out there. I saw George Carlin out there. Actually, I saw George Carlin in Montana too, and
no way.
And George Carlin in Montana, I thought, this is not good. He started out saying, took him 3 hours, or what did he say? 13 hours and 45 minutes or something like that to get to where he was in Montana, and he was worn out, and he had all this new material he wanted to try, and it was quite a few years ago, maybe 15 years ago, and he was. I just thought, he's gonna be going through the motions, and he did 2 hours and 45 minutes and didn't even
holy shit
take a breath, and and I got to hear everything that I pretty much wanted to hear, plus in addition to like a half hour news stuff. So that kind of pace really, I think is impressive. And so how long have you been doing stand-up?
I've been at it for a little over 6 years. October was my 6-year anniversary.
Wow.
So a few months past that, it's been a pretty good ride. I get to perform all over the country now. So it's been a lot of fun. I'm actually planning my first like international trip outside of Canada. I did like a small little, I wouldn't say a tour, but like a couple of weekends out there in Canada, different spots. And now I'm actually planning for a European tour. So it'll be fun.
Yeah, that sounds fun. How'd you get started?
I was a student at Western Oregon University, and we brought in a comedian, and I was like, oh man, this is my first time seeing like live comedy. I grew up watching a lot of comedy. It was super fun seeing you. And he was like, yeah, you enjoy comedy? I was like, yeah, man, I've always kind of wanted to be a comedian, like kind of secretly. And then he was like, just do it. And so then 2 weeks later, we had a new student week talent show. And so I signed up for the talent show and I did comedy, and I haven't looked back since.
So how did that first one go?
It went really well, like really well. There were probably 600 to 700 students in the area, and like first time on stage. Like I did like 12 and a half minutes, which was so long for like looking back now for first time on stage.
Right.
And it went pretty well. I was really happy with it. I still have the video now. I've like watched it a few years ago. Now looking back, the material is not that great, but the crowd loved it. That's all that matters, you know. If the people like it, then that's what matters.
I know 12 minutes must seem like a lot, but I don't know how, you know, somebody could do it. Like, let's say you're on a Letterman spot or Jimmy Kimmel, and you get 7 minutes, or even in a comedy club, you know, and you get 7 minutes. I mean, you got to plan on the best that you have for 7 minutes, and you know, they're not going to give you anything extra there, right?
Yeah, you get cut off immediately. I haven't had TV stuff yet, but I've had some auditions for some TV stuff, and they want your set to be exactly that time frame. They do not let you go over, and it's it's super stressful. Now, like coming from the Northwest, like I was doing a lot of longer sets, but now being in Chicago area, I'm doing a lot of like 3s and 5s when I'm in the city, and that 3 minutes is awful. It makes you a better comic, though. And then you also don't have to sit through as many bad comics, so that's like a plus. But it's different. 3 minutes.
That was one of the things that really hit me. That I didn't think. I had no idea. I'd up until maybe 10, 15 years ago, I hadn't really been to any clubs that did an open mic. So I hadn't really, had the experience or knowledge of what actually happened. And what really surprised me was there were I loved them all, but there were some people that were just so incredibly bad. And there was a guy that I was in DuPont Circle in Washington, D.C., and he did 2 sets. And his second set, he just decided he was just going to improv the whole thing. And I just couldn't believe what I was seeing, and it was so.
It was like your first UFO,
right? I was wide-eyed. My mouth was wide open, and I don't think I breathed for 7 minutes. But I was pulling for the guy. But he went from doing something okay to just, bombing horribly, and you got guys like Norm Macdonald when they bomb. It's just the funniest thing ever. But when it's somebody that you don't know and somebody who obviously cares so much about that type of thing that they're going to throw it all out there no matter what. It's like, wow.
Yeah, the bomb is worse when it's somebody that doesn't have a name behind them.
So what do you think it is about? Do you think it's the place, it's the people, the combination, or are there places out there, especially in Northwest, that are notorious for comedians having a really hard time and possibly bombing?
It's kind of like a lot of different things. Yeah, there are some places that are like notorious for comics bombing. That are like just notoriously rough rooms. I ran a room in Lakewood called the Blue Note Lounge, and if you weren't very confident, the room would eat you alive. Nate Jackson runs a room. What now is going to be a comedy club in the Northwest in Washington, and that room is notoriously rough for comics that have no confidence. If you're not funny, the room will eat you alive. And I've watched plenty of comics die in that room. There are rooms where the people are just like, we want funny. If you're not funny, we're going to smell the blood in the water and just piranha attack you. There were a couple of spaces like that. I think most of it just comes down to confidence, though. Like the just knowing that you're funny and just being able to like go with the flow of the room. Some people just don't have the ability to do that.
One of the things I noticed here was the fact that you would have, there's some decent bars with a really nice stage and it's a really nice setting and a great place. You'd think that would be very conducive for comedians. However, you had this element, which was, you never knew who was going to be there to MC. It could be some guy from the local radio station. It could have been somebody that was just there that night. And the introduction was like key, for instance, one night I was at there was 3 really good comics and they were touring and they were from like the West Coast in California. And so I felt it was going to be really good. And they had this guy from this local radio station. Every time before one of these people would come up and, these comedians would go to the back of the room and they're ready to make their way through the crowd and, they're going to jog through and whatever. And this MC who is a local radio guy would talk about like a month away at this bar, they're going to have a wet t-shirt contest, so these guys are all whooping it up, over this wet t-shirt contest. And, and then yeah, here's Ken Hamlett, you know? And so this person would come wandering through the crowd and like nothing, dead silence, you know?
Oh yeah, you don't have boobs. Like that's
right, exactly.
You just got thrown to the wolves. Like, that's awful. There's definitely a couple of places that are like that where they're like, all right, this is the main attraction, but they're here. And they just kind of want you to like keep the audience at bay for a little bit while they set up things. Those to me are the most fun rooms where the people just are like, just shut up already, man. We came here to see nipples through a wet t-shirt.
Or they don't turn off the baseball or football game. You know, that's going on the whole time too. Have you ever run into that? I mean, that's got to be.
Oh my God.
Wow.
So many. I actually did a cancer benefit show at a bar, a real shitty bar. On top of that, they had TVs running while we're like doing jokes to raise money for some guy that has cancer, that had cancer, and we're trying to help him pay for his medical bills. And so he literally had this show in the States, and people, like, nobody listened. We were kind of off to the side, and we just had TVs playing. I want to say it was during college baseball.
Right.
So, like, and everybody's like a UW fan, and it was the worst, like one of the worst shows that I've ever done. But also one of the funniest. Like, all the comics became better friends because of it, because everybody's like, all right, we're sitting through this misery together. Like, we are in Dante's Inferno together in this experience. So,
you know what I think? One of the things that totally amazes me too is that, you know, let's say over the period now, I'm 50 plus years old, so, you know, I'm going back, but things have changed so much, and I've seen a lot of comedy. And one of the things that too has changed, and we're talking about what people do in bars, or what I'm going to talk about is what people do in bars. What we're seeing in the Northwest right now is this huge attraction and fan base for women's fast pitch softball. So like you go into a Montana bar and you'll see that. And the other thing you see is which I'm a very huge fan, is women's pole vaulting, which is incredible because, you know, every one of these ladies is like 6'2", and you know, you can take it from there. It's a different world, man.
It definitely is, dude. I actually am like a fan of like women fast pitch, women's softball, like whatever you want to call it. I'm a huge fan because having so many friends in high school that played fast pitch and softball, and like ended up going and playing college and stuff. So then I got to watch their careers as it like developed. But I don't think there's a more competitive. Women's soccer is probably the only thing that's more competitive.
True.
Than like women's like fast pitch. Like, they are the most aggressive. I think that's part of the reason why I like it. Yeah, they're so aggressive, and it's like they will. Like, they have ill will towards each other. It is the best thing in the world. They are so competitive. They want to win more than anything else in the world. And if that means having to take somebody else out, they will do that. Like,
and you don't see two schools anymore that are just rivals. You'll see a school and they have like 7 rivals. I mean, it's just, they just hate each other, and they get out there and they put on all this makeup. They look fantastic. And they do the whole game, and it's incredible. And they'll beat each other up if they have to. I mean, if it comes to that.
100%, man. Those are like, they're gangbangers is what they are. They are gangbangers. They will die for each other. It is like a beautiful thing. And the makeup thing, I didn't even realize it until you just said that. But yeah, they always have. They
look fantastic.
Full face of makeup. Look amazing. And they're literally working out for 2 hours? Hour and a half, like however long the game is.
2.5 hours. I don't know. It's a long game.
Time.
And you know, there's been some like supermodels that came out of like women's pole vaulting, and I mean, I want you to check it out one of these days soon, because there's a couple of people, and there's this lady from girl from Croatia, and it's incredible. I'm like, I can't even believe what I'm seeing, and the clothes and how everything's like tailored, you know. It's not like they're just, you know, wearing knee-high socks and whatever, and gym shorts. I mean, there's a lot of money even in pole vaulting for the outfit, and it's an incredible show, and there's thousands of people that show up for that.
Yeah. One of my, I was actually a college track athlete. So one of my good friends in college was a pole vaulter from Poland. And she was an All-American. So like women's pole vault is like a thing that I've always watched. I want to say 2000 and what happened in like 2012. That was like a big year for women's pole vault. They were like all going for the records and stuff. There were a couple of women that were amazing. The American who ended up being an Australian by the end of her like career.
Yeah, there's
super amazing.
Right now there's a Polish pole vaulter, and there's also Eastern Europe has, I should say Western Europe has a lot of pole vaulters. I didn't think we were going to talk about women's pole vaulting tonight, but anytime I get the chance.
Yeah, you're like, let me throw that out there just in case. Let me test the waters to see where you're interested.
That'll be the cover art for this podcast.
Right? Yeah.
Women's
tons of views. Yeah.
Pole vaulting. One of the other things that came to my mind, I knew this pair of comedians, and I think I texted you or something that I had wrote a screenplay, and this must have been about 2007. It was about two comedians who basically went out, and they would, somebody would piss them off in the crowd, or something would happen, after their gig, or some drunk would say something, and they would end up slaughtering this guy and killing him, and so as they travel around, they meet this woman, and of course, when the woman comes into the scene, she's hitchhiking, and she's got this really dry, sick humor, and she gets picked up by this truck driver, and she kills the truck driver, and then they end up picking her up, and it's hilarity after that. But it's a chop and mash show, but it's loosely based on these two comedians that I met back in it was in Elko, Nevada, which they have a couple small casinos there. You might have been there. And they get comedy in there. Yeah, they get comedy in there. And, it's one of those places, it's either really, really hit or miss. And, it was okay for those guys. And I just happened to come home a few weeks later, and they ended up showing up in my hometown. I saw them a couple of other times as they toured the Northwest. But
kind of scary, man.
Yeah, but I'd ask them. I was just so fascinated about what it was like, in these small, Midwest towns and Northwest United States towns, and towns like in Montana, and not bigger towns like Butte, Montana, but I'm talking about these little towns like the one that I was in, and what was that like, and what was their most memorable thing. One of them had told me that they had did a gig at just a little bar, and everything was bad about it because they didn't have an MC, so that nobody introduced them. They didn't take baseball off, and they didn't have a microphone like per se, like you're used to having. They had like a CB microphone on a coiled cable, that was, so it was just like talking on a CB radio. And I said, well, what was that like? And they said, well, in the first like minute and a half, we went through like every bit of trucker material that we knew, and it was all downhill from there. So it was,
You're just, after that point, you're like, all right, well, what else do these people want to talk about?
So what's the worst introduction you ever received other than the one I did like 32 minutes ago?
No, your intro was actually not bad. Like, I would prefer if most of my intros were that way, just very short, sweet to the point. I've had, I don't get too many terrible intros. I get people screwed up my name a lot.
Really? Because
I used to have a stage name, actually. And so my name is Ken Dale. So some people will use my full name, and I go by Ken all the time. But I used to have a stage name that I used in my first, 2 years of comedy, year and a half of comedy. And I dropped that name years ago. And people will still, I want to say last year, somebody still introed me with the stage name. And everybody in the crowd was just confused, like, who the fuck why did they say that? So then I had to, and it used to be like Thundercat, which is now is a terrible name.
There was a, Bobcat made it on that for.
Yeah, but like I probably could have made it work. I probably could have, but I was like,
Thundercats.
This mode where I was like, I think it's kind of weird. I don't think it's.
No, I like it. Thunder, and it's more syllables, so
like
it flows better.
Okay. I'll keep that in mind. maybe there'll be a return of the Thundercat.
Yeah, I'd check out Thundercat if I saw that on a huge marquee in foot-high letters.
You're making me feel terrible about my decisions with comedy now.
No. That's a tough decision, though. I mean, what was that like when you just decided, hey, I'm just going to do this? And I mean, was there a point where you just dropped everything? I'm going for it.
Yeah, I just dropped it. I was just like, hey, we're just going to drop it. And I'll go by my name, Ken. Like, we'll go by Ken. And then for the most part, it was pretty smooth. Like, most people didn't care. I also had moved at the time. It was like right before I moved where I was like, I'm just dropping the nickname. Like, I don't want a nickname. I'm going to have to change it eventually. And so I just was like, all right, we're going to go by Ken and Ken Hamlett. And so then it was like Ken Hamlett. And then I moved to New York. And then I moved from New York to Washington. And then before I moved to Chicago, I came back out to Oregon. And I did a show. I was headlining a club. And they're like, put your hands together for Ken. Or they said, put your hands together for Thundercat Hamlet. And everybody in the room was so confused because these are like people that I had made fans for a while. And they were like, I don't know who the fuck Thundercat is, but I hope Ken comes out here. Like, I came here to see Ken. Where the fuck is Ken at? He hasn't been here yet. And then... And then I come out, I'm like, oh yeah, that was really fucking confusing because nobody knows me by that name at this point. So it was like a super, like I wasted about the amount of time that I've spent explaining this name on stage, and they were like, what the fuck? And then I had to like slowly get into my material. That was like probably one of my least favorite intros. Another time, the host bombed for what was supposed to be 4.5 minutes turned to like 15 minutes because it just kept going and trying to find a joke to end on and never got a joke. And they were like, put your hands together for Ken Hamlett. And I was like, all right. I guess we're doing this, guys. Yeah. But for me, it's usually not that bad because like if somebody bombs, I just make fun of them for a little bit and it ruins a relationship, but it makes the room like me more.
There's the MC too, though, who does that every time comedy's in town, and he wants to be a comedian, but he just can't quite do it. So that's got to be tough, and I've seen that, where this guy will get up there, and maybe there's 3 comics or maybe there's 4 comics, so this guy has to get up every time and do 2 or 3 minutes of banter, and it gets to the point where it's monotonous. I've seen that. And it's hard on guys like you who need to get up there and be funny.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. There's a lot. I do crowd work, so like I'll have fun with people and I'll mess around. So also, am I allowed to cuss? I should probably ask that.
Yeah, we've already reached the point where I'm not going to do any more editing on this.
Okay.
No, I don't think too many kids listen to this one.
All right. I'll make sure I limit my cursing. But yeah, I do crowd work, so I'll mess around with people in the crowd and I'll have fun and like I'll joke around. So it's not even an issue when somebody bombs in front of me because at this point you should be able to turn any crowd around. Like if you consider yourself a comic, that's how I feel. Like you should just be able to like have fun and make any room laugh. So if it's a bad host or a weird night or freaking this next weekend I'll be in Texas doing some shows and I booked a show during Super Bowl Sunday, and so I'm like, well, if I can make this work, we can make anything work.
Yeah, they're gonna be loud. I mean, either they're I think people are kind of at that point though on Super Bowl Sunday they're ready to have some fun all day, all day long. Not just during the game but before and after. So I think
that's what my hope is.
Yeah,
that's what my hope is. I'm like, all right, hopefully they're just like, yeah, let's have fun. Let's just get drunk and just have a wild night. Or it could be the total opposite, and everybody's sad that their team lost, and It'll be a long trip home.
You know, what you do in entertainment is a little different, and I can't really think of anything in entertainment that's, I mean, other than music to a degree, but what you do is sort of has this supernatural way in the world of coaxing and persuading or tricking or convincing people to laugh. You don't just make people laugh. I mean, you got to coax them, you got to persuade them, you got to trick them from time to time and convince them. There's not just a laugh, but there's different ways of getting there, right?
Yeah. There's I mean, as a comic, you should have like a bunch of different tools. So there's like the comics that do like the physical comedy, and like there's the comics that like will bring you into their stories. Like you'll do like some crowd work and like kind of get the people to talk and like kind of push them or persuade them to talk about certain topics, and then that leads you into your next bit. So there's like a bunch of different skills that you can like utilize to make the comedy feel supernatural, like, but it's also you're leading them to your next topic that's already pre-written. But then there's also the comics that just kind of go with the flow. I like to just go with the flow a lot of times, especially depending on like what I'm doing and what show it is. I'll just go with the flow and like let things happen the way that they do, and you just kind of make funny happen where funny happens. I'm a person that just kind of lives in the moment, so that's why when you were like the Supernatural podcast, I was like, oh heck yeah, man, live in the moment, talk about stuff that's interesting, and figure out where it goes from there. That's 100% how I live my life now.
You know, I mean, when I do this, it's amazing. And one of the things that is a bit stressful, but it happens a lot is last Sunday night at, 8:05, my phone goes off and it's a guy that's in Europe, and he's like, in Eastern Europe. And he's like, yeah, I'm ready to go at 8:30 your time. And I was like, what? And that was a suggestion, a couple weeks prior, and I'd never heard from him again. And so I'm like,
oh, no.
Out of bed, hadn't written anything. And likewise, I've had, the occasion where, I ask somebody a question, and the first question, and there's a 2-word answer. And so that kind of sets my pace, So there's my chance to actually see how good I can do, it kind of does make it fun and break up the monotony. Not that it's very enjoyable, all of it, but yeah. What about your podcast? Talk about that for a minute. Tell them what it's called again. And it's a good podcast.
Yeah. So my podcast is called A Drunken Night Out, which I think is relatable to everybody that drinks, because we've all had them. So I've had comics, strippers, homeless people, just like some of my friends that work in like insurance companies, and just everybody. It's literally just anybody off the street. I actually do some live from the street episodes where, which that's all on my Patreon at patreon.com/Drunken Night Out. Where you come on, there's 3 topics. You talk about the first time you ever got drunk or attempted to get drunk or high, whatever your substance of choice is. And then you make a drink, you name a drink, and then we talk about like the most wild, the craziest, most embarrassing night that you've ever had. We've had people tell stories of, I had some people from El Paso that told stories of going over to Mexico as like underage and drinking, and I had some stories where people pissed themselves. I've had stories where comics have like gotten drunk and then had their first like lesbian experience. So like their sexual awakening at the same time. I literally just recorded an episode where somebody lost their virginity and drank for the first time in one night. We've had all kinds of interesting stories. This has literally been like criminal stories released on the podcast. Hopefully those are past the statute limitations, but I don't do all the research on that. It's a lot of fun. And I do a live show where comics, they do the podcast, they tell their story, and then they do some stand-up, and they get drunk, and then the crowd gets to tell them what to joke about for their last set of the show. So they'll just yell out topics, and then the comics have to do jokes on whatever topic they yell out. And it's kind of facilitated because I'm on the God mic, and they yell out topics to me, then I tell the comics joke about whatever the topics that is. And I travel that around the country. So it's been a lot of fun doing that show and the podcast itself. So it's a lot of fun. Really a lot of fun.
I think it's really important too that you stay in touch with everybody who's gotten to see you, you know, because, you know, some comedians, they just roll into town and that's it. And,
No.
you know, to me, it sounds like you have a vision, you know, something in the future.
Yes. I do. So my thing is like, it's all interactive. I want people to like be a part of the show. I want people to like control a lot of my thing is I don't call it a comedy show. I call it a comedy party. Because of that. So people can email me their stories if you want to at a drunken night out at gmail.com. So like if you have a story that you want to email me and you think that it's crazy and it's funny or it's embarrassing or you want to even be on the podcast, email me from there or message me on Facebook or Instagram. It's all Ken Hamlett, KenHamlett. And my thing is like all about interaction. I do a lot of crowd work in my shows because I want people to feel like they're a part of the show because it's all relatable. Like we've all experienced these things. I want to talk to people. I want to get to know the people. So like that's a huge thing for me. Like with the crowd work and the show and the podcast, it's all about hearing other people's sides. And we kind of all laugh at it because it's all funny and we're living life. And the last like year and a half of I've been about like just living your life and not experiencing it. So like letting life pass you by. So if we're telling our drunken stories and our embarrassing moments, we all get to laugh about it. We all get to live that moment with them. So it's all fun. It's all fun. Life should be fun. So
it's fun being drunk from time to time.
Oh, it's fun. I'm drinking right now, man.
I have. So I'm gonna actually email you a story because I've been trying. I have a couple stories that I haven't podcasted about just because, you know, it would probably take somebody to actually ask me questions. And I've contacted a couple people and we got a story, but the premise of the whole story was that I was out one night with a bunch of friends and we would go to this area where there's this river and wasn't much of a river and we'd hang out there and we did. And we were there for maybe, you know, half an hour and we were coming back. And so it was me and one of my high school friends and two girls that from a different high school that we knew. But so, you know, I said to my buddy, I said, you know, stop. I got to go outside here for a minute and check out the trees. But this was out on the bald prairie and you could see a million miles in every direction. But, so, you know, I knew as soon as I got out and when I wanted to get back in the car, he was going to drive off. So I couldn't get in the car, you know, and he's just that way. So, you know, I had it in my mind that I was going to, you know, play him a little bit if he did that. So I walked up to the car door. He takes off and drives like 50 feet down the road and expecting me to walk up there and try to jump in the car. And I know he was going to take off again. So I just made a beeline to my left and went out in this wheat field, which was about 3 feet tall. And I knew, you know, we were about 2 miles from where we were supposed to go. And I thought, you know, that'll be really funny. I'm just going to go through this wheat field and they won't see me after I get through it to the other road. And you know, and we'd been drinking quite a bit. So I took off through this wheat field and my friend was, you know, maybe 200 feet away and he had stopped and I went about a quarter mile and I watched him and they waited and waited and waited. And I could see him getting out and they're looking for me and excuse me. So I decided I'm going to walk that 2 miles and I'm going to meet them when they come back. And that's when things got really, really bad. Not only for me, but them too. And it's a really terrifying, good story that, I mean, ultimately it turned out good, but, it, you know, was something it changed me. And then my buddy, you know, convinced that I was, you know, a goner. I mean, it just seemed to, affect him for a very long time, which I felt badly about that. But then again, I didn't because, you know, he certainly would have done that to me, you know. And
exactly. It's like he tried to mess with you first.
Right. So either way it was going to happen, but you know, it just happened. The part that wasn't, you know, that lasted a little longer in his mind happened with him and not me. But,
Man, I would love to get you on the podcast and get that story.
It was something, man. I can't even tell you. It was just craziness. So, yeah. And it's the weird thing about it. It was real. And, there was weird stuff that happened to me and weird stuff that happened to him and those two girls. And by the time we were done, those three were crying like babies when they saw me. And that was the result of it. And I was just like, wow. And, so, I had one of the things I was going to tell you, I wanted to get a comedian on the show, and I've had other people who've done other things and weren't really UFO people. But I knew after seeing your website, listening to your podcast that, you were going to be on. I would have these comedians and I'd have them lined up. I said, okay, we're going to do this Sunday night, or we're going to do this Wednesday night, and it's going to be this time, and ultimately that time would come, and I couldn't get a hold of them, and they were like, well, they'd call me the following Wednesday, and wasn't it tonight? And to me, I'm naming you the responsible comedian because you are, and I mentioned the website, which is I want you to tell them about the website after this, but you got a good website, and it kind of, I like it because it kind of really, I like that home picture. And then there's the photos of you, out on the road, and you're kind of, we get to see you for a minute, and you're sitting down, below the sign, but I don't know. It's just those pictures that it really kind of puts you in touch with who you are and, what you do. And it's really cool. And so tell them where to find that website and what's on the website. And I see you got some merch on there too.
Yeah, I have merch on there. So my website, if you have enjoyed listening to me talk podcasts and comedy and UFOs and all that stuff, and you want to see more of me, visit me on my website at bigblackschlongs.com.
And is that the German spelling of schlong or the Americanized version?
It's SHLONGS.
So German. That's interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. That's bigblackschlongs.com. And if you're not adventurous, you can just type in KendaleHamlett.com. That's KENDALE Hamlet HAMLETT.com. And I have a lot of merch on there. I've been doing comedy for 6 years, so I have some different jokes that have some merch behind them. There's some I'm the Captain Now merch. I have bigblackschlongs.com bands, because that's really my website. That really is.
My Alien Life Podcast.
Hey everybody, it's Cam Brower, and I'd like you to check out My Alien Life patron page. What is it? Think of it as an online tip jar. My Alien Life patron page is a website that gives everyone in the world an opportunity to become a patron and support artists they believe in. The great thing about supporting My Alien Life is you get to decide how much you feel comfortable contributing to each podcast. My goal is to keep doing at least 2 podcasts each week. And it's okay if you want to put a cap on how much you'd like to support every month so you don't go over your budget. As you know, some weeks I get a burst of energy and I want to produce a lot of new content. I'll keep producing episode after episode and you'll get all the content. I won't hold back and make you pay for extra content. And if you just want to listen without becoming a patron, that's awesome. You still get to hear all My Alien Life podcasts for free. It's expensive to make a podcast. There's electronic gear, web domain fees, web hosting fees, t-shirts, postage stamps, tinfoil hats, alien assault spray, and more. No matter what you decide, please always listen to the podcast. That's what I really want. We're a team, and your support is what keeps people like us going. Thank you so much for being amazing, and keep listening to My Alien Life podcast.
There's kind of a bunch of different things, and my podcast is on the website as well. And I have some videos.
Yeah, I like how you put that podcast right on the website. That's cool. It's a good look.
Yeah,
I'm gonna do that.
So they recently changed it because before I had to do all this weird stuff to have the podcast on there, so I didn't. But then when I changed the name, it actually lined up with when they changed the website stuff, like editing stuff. So the podcast is straight up on the website, so you can literally listen from the website, which is super cool. But yeah, I keep all my tour dates up there, and I am in a bunch of different cities coming up this weekend. Actually, I don't know when this episode comes out, but this weekend, what is that? The last weekend of January, so January 31st through February 2nd, I'll be in Texas. I'll be in Austin at I don't even remember the theater now. I'll be in Austin, and then I'll be in Houston, and then Plano, Texas. The following weekend, the 13th, I believe, I'll be in Appleton, Wisconsin at Skyline Comedy Club that full weekend. And I'll be doing my live show at Drunken Night Out that Sunday. And the weekend after that, I'll be in Oregon and Washington. I'll do the 20th, I'll be at Harvey's Comedy Club and Curious Comedy Theater. The 21st and 22nd, I'll be at Capital City Theater in Salem, Oregon. And then the 23rd, I'll be at Tacoma Comedy Club. And then the following weekend, I'll be at the Lincoln Lodge in Chicago, Illinois. I'll also be at Laugh Factory on like the 10th, I believe. It's a lot of dates, but you can look at literally all of my dates are on my website. I'm booked all the way through June at this point.
So what's that? Do you just take off from Illinois in a car and that? Are you flying at all?
I fly to the places that are more than like I'll drive 12 hours. I feel comfortable driving 12 hours. I did New York earlier this year. Last year. And it's like a 12-hour drive. I'm fine with driving 12, but like over 12 is too far.
Right.
And 12 is kind of too far nowadays anyways. So I fly a lot of the time, but like in the Midwest, I'll drive to all that stuff. Like in Ohio, I'll be in Ohio in March. I'm going to drive to that. I'm in Wisconsin. I drive to that. Iowa, I drive to that. St. Louis, I was there earlier this year or last year. I drove to that. A lot of that kind of stuff. Midwest stuff I'll drive to. Anything outside of the Midwest, that's when I'm like, all right, well, let's fly and just rent a car or something like that. Because this is just a lot of driving. Like 12 hours is a lot of time to be on the road.
It's huge.
And have to come back and go to work.
Yeah, especially if you have to be there that night. So what's the weirdest experience you've had on the road?
Oh, weirdest experience.
Something that really sticks out.
So there's been a couple. Do we have time to tell a couple?
Go ahead. Yeah, I want to hear it.
Okay. So I have a joke about my wife and like sexual stuff, and one of the jokes is like,
sure she appreciates it.
Yeah, she loves it. One of the jokes is like my wife wants to do like porno stuff, and I call her out because she doesn't want to do porno stuff. When I ask about it, my porno stuff is having a threesome with a midget, and I make this whole joke about having a threesome with a midget, and there turns out to be a midget in the crowd. And I'm doing like a winery at this time, and she was like,
the winery
she
midget
stands up. Yeah, it was. There's a picture on my Instagram about it.
Should we be saying midget? Is that okay?
I don't think. She didn't mind the word midget. She told me it was okay. She gave me. I got the midget pass, I guess.
Right. Thinking that you'd never find one.
Yeah, exactly. So she like popped up, and then she did not want to leave the entire night. She wanted to go home with me, and that was a really interesting night. And she had huge boobs, like giant boobs. Her body was so small, but her boobs were so huge. That was one that stuck out to me. I think it was just the boobs that stuck out. And then another experience that was like a wild, crazy night. I used to do this show with it was a co-host. We had a lot of fun just doing the show on the road, and we would just get really drunk together. And we went to a strip club after the show because we always do that to celebrate. He spent every dollar that he had at the strip club that night, and then just filed a claim the next day saying that he wasn't at the strip club. that was a pretty wild night. The whole lot of shenanigans that happened that night. And he got all the money back for the most part. He got all the money back. So that was another wild night on the road. I've had so many wild nights. It's always fun being on the road.
And people don't care. I mean, if they meet you after the show, they want to party, they want to take you out from time to time. It doesn't matter. You've been up for 24 hours and you just drove 12 hours. Oh, no. Yeah. No, they don't care. And that's my thing. I like to go out and party anyways. I'm like, man, I already drank 5 Red Bulls on the way out here. Right.
Let's party. I'm not going to go to sleep till Wednesday. Let's have fun, man.
So what do you do to take care of yourself out there? I mean, to keep fit and not, end up dying 10 years from now.
Yeah, I don't do hard drugs. That's a number one. No hard drugs. I actually don't even smoke weed anymore. I had a terrible experience. And so now I don't smoke weed. I just drink, and I go to the gym. Usually that's when I'm most active, is on the road. I go to the gym at least. If I'm in town for 3 days, I go 2 days. And I drink lots of water to
Water's
hydrate
good.
myself. Yeah. Gotta hydrate yourself. Take care of
your brain is mostly water. It's good to take care of the brain.
Exactly.
Especially
so I
now.
drink tons of water, and I try not to black out. I never drink to the point of blacking out. So that's like a thing where
that's a policy now.
Yeah.
No blackout.
Company-wide policy now. We just don't black out. Yeah.
So are you superstitious out there? Do you wear the same underwear on stage or anything like that going on?
Oh man. I actually found out that I am kind of superstitious, but it wasn't something that I had planned. It just happened, and then people would call me out on it. But I wear, so there's a pair of underwear that I wear because I'm always I'm super active on stage, so sometimes you can see my underwear. The pair of underwear that I used to wear all the time, I recently tore them, so now I don't have that underwear anymore. This is a shirt that I pretty much carry with me every single time. There's this flower shirt that looks like what's the lemonade, or not lemonade, but tea. There's a tea that looks like it. But all my friends make fun of me for it all the time on my Instagram. Anytime you see me post a picture, they always go, it's a shirt again, Ken. We got to go take you shopping. You never wear anything else but that shirt.
But it's probably a good look too, right?
It's a great shirt. Yeah. It is. People love it. And every time so now it's like a thing where I'll send out somebody will be like, I love your shirt. Great looking shirt. And I take a video with them and I'm like, hey, what'd you say about my shirt? And they'll be like, it's an amazing shirt. I love your shirt. And I send it out to my friends because it's this long joke now at this point.
Well, I have 3 go-to shirts, and I wear them a lot. And, I don't care what people think because I'm out there trying to make myself look good, what I think look good. I feel good in the shirt. I'm not out trying to make you look good or you feel good. I mean, that it's a good shirt. So.
Yeah,
I know where you're at.
I'm I love this shirt.
Yeah. So I was going to tell you about this. It's I didn't want to plant a seed in your head that you might have a hotel room that's haunted, but statistically, now if you're in hotels a lot, statistically it's more likely that someone has been killed in your hotel room than in your own house, and it's also 41% more likely that there's been a multiple homicide in your hotel room than in your kitchen. Those are real statistics.
Multiple homicide.
So you stay at Best Western, whatever it could, 2 people could have been. Yeah, they don't keep that room closed long, just long enough to
just put some bleach on the blood stain.
Right, exactly. Yeah. You ever been out driving and all of a sudden it's 10:30 p.m. and you're heading to another town after a gig, and the next time you look at your watch, it's 1:43 a.m. and you've only driven a half mile? That's missing time. That's common in the alien community.
Oh man, all the time. But I'm like I'll I'm notorious for just not stopping. Like I'll go to a show.
Yeah, me too.
And then I'll just be like, oh, time to leave. We're gonna go home now, and just drive 10 hours when it's already 1 a.m. Like I am so bad about that. So like there'll be times where I'm like, I'll be driving, and then I'm like, man, or it'd be like, I spent 30 minutes on the road, but it's been 4 hours. And then I'm like, oh man, where did that time go? Or the opposite, where it's like it feels like I've been driving for 5 hours, and it's been 10 minutes, and I'm like, man, that time should have been already have left. So,
well, I've been out on the highway, the dark desert highway at night, and I've told these stories about missing time, but it's one of those things that it's hard to differentiate. And the reason I ask you is because you come from a different angle than I do. So, there's these times that I've actually, it's like 2 hours have gone by, and it's felt like a minute or two. And the most recent, and it's been a while, but I had to drive from Montana to Disneyland, and that's a 23-hour drive. And we've done it before, and we'd leave like at 6 p.m. Montana time and get to Disneyland like the next day at 3 o'clock. And going through Utah and going, I-15 south through Utah and Idaho, it's just, it's just craziness. There I am with all my kids, and is it a blackout? It's scary to think that, I just don't remember, 2.5 hours that just seemingly went by, and I don't have an account for it. It's just the craziest thing. But, there are people out there in the UFO alien community. They are certain that, they're able to fill in that time gap with different stories. And I have some stories too on my podcast, but it's hard. It's hard. It's hard driving, and yes, like you said, I'm one of those people. If I have a hotel room and I'm somewhere and I got to drive home or drive somewhere else and I got to be there at noon tomorrow, I'd just rather drive to the next town, and get there at 4 a.m. and sleep till 11:30, or something like that. To me, it just works better. And despite all these weird things in my life that have happened driving on the highway, I still drive on the highway, Ken.
Yeah, you have to.
Still, yeah.
There's no way not to drive on the highway.
Yeah. I was watching your YouTube video that you have on your website. It's funny. I love that melanin joke. You know the one I'm talking about?
Yeah, yes. That's one of my favorite jokes, actually, to this day. I think it's one of my more creative jokes. I think it's a good funny joke, yeah. And
it was funny because like 2 minutes before I listened to that, CNN, I don't know if you saw it, they had a report today that there's a new Barbie is it called Vitiligo? That's where
they have a vitiligo Barbie.
Yeah, and she's gorgeous. I mean, if you have a vitiligo Barbie, I mean, first of all, there's no way Barbie's not going to be gorgeous. And this vitiligo Barbie is stunning, and it's amazing that. But then they have the whole Barbie lineup there, which is they have a Barbie in a wheelchair, they have a Barbie with an artificial leg, and they have a bald Barbie. Yeah. So
that's kind of cool. So, they should have a fucked up Barbie though too.
you know all those Barbies got to be a little fucked up. I mean,
they gotta have a meth head Barbie. Like I want all the Barbies.
That's it's the vitiligo thing. It's but here you have this perfectly beautifully proportioned Barbie. Barbie's always going to be beautifully proportioned, and I don't know if a white person has like big brown patches all over their body. I think they don't call it vitiligo. I think they call it cancer. Or worse, I don't know. I've never seen that. I've never seen that happen.
We call it liver spots.
Liver spots. Yeah, we get liver spots. When does that start to happen?
Man. I don't know, but I'm scared for white people because of
that. Is there a preventative thing for that? I'm not.
Being black.
This isn't funny, but you can get the generic Rogaine and Walgreen. I'm not losing my hair, but I've been using it for like 5 years just as preventative. And I swear that, for certain baldness, it doesn't regrow hair. It does if you have that, whatever that is, the spot all the way in the back of your head, it'll regrow hair. But it doesn't say it doesn't prevent baldness. So I've been doing it, and it's not cheap. It's like $50 for 3 cans of that, in which a can lasts about 30 days. So I got that going for me.
That is, I actually started shaving my head like prematurely because of that. I have a twin brother, and he has a screwed up hairline.
Right.
And so I always thought like, oh man, if his hairline is screwed up, my hairline will be screwed up. And so I started shaving my head prematurely. Like most of the time I'm like bald because I'm worried about having a screwed up hairline and balding.
What about that moment where you let it grow back a little bit and maybe it's not going to be what you remembered? It's a little more.
Oh no, it's not bad. My hair is a little bit longer now than it normally is. I actually have hair on my head right now.
No, you look
and
good.
It's not bad. It's like people tell me all the time, like, man, why do you shave your head? And I'm like, I just feel like I'm going to be bald. Really stupid, but it's one of those things where I'm like, it's preventative. I got to get ahead of this thing.
All right. Well, we probably better close this thing out. And I awkwardly say that because I'm totally out of material, but I want everybody to go to your website and I found it at kenhamlettcomedy.com, right? kenhamlet.com. Yeah.
KenDaleHamlett.com.
Yeah, that's when I Googled. I wasn't realizing that you had another web address.
If you type in Ken Hamlett into Google, my website will pop up, or like my social media, or like some video or something like that. I have a lot of stuff all over the internet because I'm like I said, I've been doing this for a little bit. So and I travel across the country. So something's going to pop up that'll lead you to my website. And the website is KenDaleHamlett.com or BigBlackSwarms.com.
But for certain, if you can't see Ken live, get on his website and listen to his podcast called The Drunken Night Out.
Yeah. And
it's good stuff. Yeah. He's got great guests. I listen to the top newest 4, I guess, that are on there. And Ken does a great job. And how many you got out there, Ken? How long have you been doing that?
So I've been doing A Drunken Night Out specifically because it was another podcast before that, but I've been doing that podcast for what am I at? 37 episodes, nice. 38 episodes. So that's like 38 weeks straight. 38 weeks straight.
So you can binge listen while you're binge drinking. Ken's
podcast. Man, do it all. Yeah. And then email me your story from that drunken moment. So.
I'm going to email mine. I want all my listeners to email them. I mean, Ken, if these people, you're just count on them emailing you stories because they're going to do it. And I'm fortunate because I get to hear their stories all the time, and they're always emailing me and texting me stories. But yeah, check out Ken Hamlett, A Drunken Night Out. He's got the podcast on his website, and it's Ken Hamlett or KenDaleHamlett also.com. And Ken, so great to have you here tonight on a short notice, and thank you, sir, very much. You're very funny.
Yeah, thank you for having me on, man. This was a lot of fun.
My Alien Life Podcast.
You can find my website at www.myalienlifepodcast.com, and please subscribe to my latest downloads at iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, and at podbean.com. And please follow me and like me on Facebook and Twitter. My Alien Life is written and produced for broadcast at Studio 254 in the Northern Rocky Mountains. The music you are hearing is produced and created by Elion. You can find all Elion's work online at Heart Dance Records.